Hello there. I am Sarah Moore, founder of Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting, author of Peaceful Discipline, and board president for the American Society for the Positive Care of Children. And I am so glad that you are here today because we are going to talk about one of the most important topics in parenting. And I realize that's a lofty statement, but this topic actually influences every other relationship that children will have throughout their lives. And our topic for today is attachment. And specifically, I'm going to be talking about raising securely attached kids and the importance of the early years. Now, that being said, if you happen to have an older child and you're thinking, oh no, it's too late, too much damage has been done, they'll never be securely attached, or perhaps, oh, it's me, I'm an adult and I'm not securely attached. I have good news for you. It is never too late to heal our primary attachment pattern. It's called earned secure attachment. So we will save that for another session, but I want you to know that healing is always possible. And for today's purposes, I'm going to talk about some things that we can do when we are raising our itty bitties, our little kids, to help them grow up in the early stages of their lives with every best chance of having a secure attachment with you and with others in their lives, not only when they're little, but also planting that seed for their whole entire life together with whoever they bring into their lives, short term and long term. So, for starters, let me talk a little bit about what are the attachment styles. You may have heard the term secure attachment, but you're not really sure what it means. There are also other attachment styles as well. And frankly, I prefer to call them attachment patterns rather than attachment styles because a style in my mind, it sounds limiting. This is the style that I live life in, and it's my lifestyle. So it sounds more permanent, whereas a pattern is something that can shift and change over time. So I will use those terms interchangeably as we go through in this meeting together. However, I want you to know that I personally prefer a secure attachment pattern or any other attachment pattern from a nomenclature perspective. Let me first talk a little bit about what the other attachment patterns are before I move into secure attachment, because we want to know and be able to identify what the other ones are when we see them. Now, a couple of quick points of clarification. The terms that I am going to use in this video are actually the terms in the attachment realm that we use to describe adult attachment patterns. There are four of them. They are actually given different names for little kids or children in general, but just because it's easier to talk about the adult terms rather than have to juggle back and forth between, oh, what is it called when they're little versus when they're big? I'm going to use the adult terms, but know that secure attachment is secure attachment. That part doesn't change much. I also want you to know that although children and adults can have a primary attachment pattern, might be secure attachment, I hope it is, we all as humans have a combo deal, for lack of a better expression, where we will certainly show aspects of other attachment patterns from time to time. There is nothing wrong or broken about that. Sometimes it depends on who we're with. Maybe I have a secure attachment pattern with parent A, but an insecure attachment pattern with parent B. I will also address, is that going to mess me up for life if I'm a little kid? What if I have a different attachment style or pattern with each of my parents or other caregivers in my life? I'll get there, but for starters, I want you to know that the terminology I'm going to use is going to be the adult patterns, but every single seed that we end up with grows into the tree of our attachment pattern as an adult. It's planted in childhood. So, with no further ado, let me talk a little bit about the four types of attachment patterns. Like I said, I'll talk about secure in a little while, but the three other types are anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. And like I said, most people are a blend of more than one style, and different styles can present with different people. as we work through life together. Now, that being said, sometimes we will start out in life with a secure attachment style, and then depending on whether we experience childhood trauma or have other negative influences in life, we might actually gravitate away from secure attachment and more into an insecure attachment pattern. Likewise, though, if we have an insecure attachment pattern, even early in life, although it's a little bit harder, frankly, to move into a secure attachment pattern, it is absolutely possible. But in the early years, it is so important to start out with a secure attachment because that really does take hold the most strongly and influence the most significantly the quality of the child's future relationships, the trust they have in other people, whether their default is going to be secure attachment patterns or some of these other patterns that I'm about to tell you about. So, with that, anxious attachment style typically manifests in adulthood as a number of things. For example, it might be fear of abandonment or rejection. I'm afraid everybody's going to leave me because people didn't really show up for me consistently when I was a little kid. So I learned don't really trust people, don't get too close. So I might hold back emotionally rather than lean into the trust that a healthy, securely attached relationship might offer. I might also have a really constant need for validation and reassurance. Are we okay? Are you sure we're okay? That can really dominate the relationship. And frankly, it can push people away if we do it too much. So we don't want to be living in that anxious attachment style as an adult. As an adult, we might have we might have trouble trusting our partner if we have one. We might always assume that not only are they going to leave us, they're probably going to do bad things to us in the process. Because again, that's what we experienced as a little kid. We might, as an adult, have really big reactions to what other people might perceive as being relatively small conflicts. Now, a very quick point of clarification when it comes to parenting, all of the ways that anxious attachment or any of the attachment patterns show up in childhood can actually be a normal part of child development. So, for example, it is developmentally normal and, in fact, even healthy for a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old to get really upset if we slice their strawberries wrong or if we cut their sandwich at the wrong angle. Oh, devastating. We as adults know it's a sandwich. I can eat it. It's a strawberry. So what if it's in pieces? It still tastes the same. But from a child development perspective, it actually makes perfect sense that children do get really explosively upset about these things. It does not mean that they have an anxious or insecure attachment. It means that they are developmentally learning what these big feelings feel like. And this is their chance to practice having those big feelings and pay attention to this part, parents, seeing whether when they have these big feelings, adults are going to show up for them and comfort them and nurture them and co regulate with them. Because with that practice over time, by the time they reach adulthood, they will know all right, it's just a strawberry, or it's just a sandwich, or it's just this invitation got canceled, the party's not happening, whatever it might be. We have enough emotional tools at that point to say, okay, I've got this, I can handle it. But it's actually really developmentally normal for children to have big reactions. Likewise, little kids might come across as clingy or needy, and we might look at this list that I'm sharing with you and say, oh no, a whole big need for reassurance is somehow somebody saying, you're not there for me enough. But as children, they actually need us to be there to prove to their little bodies that adults are safe, that people are going to show up for them. So it's not clinginess that's the problem. Little kids are actually supposed to be very dependent on their adults. So if a child is wanting to be around you all the time, normal child development. So please do not worry if you have a child who is exhibiting these characteristics. But I want to let you know that if we don't show up for our children in ways that create a secure attachment, these are some of the ways that these traits can show up in adulthood. So don't worry, I will absolutely get to how can we empower our children with secure attachment so that they can be in emotionally healthy relationships and not freak out every time there's a minor shift to a schedule or something like that. So continuing on with anxious attachment, how it shows up in attachment is sometimes, as I mentioned, we might not trust our partner. We might feel intensely jealous. We might really struggle with boundaries. Maybe it's other people's boundaries, or maybe it's our own boundaries. Maybe we end up being overly permissive with everybody we know because we don't want to upset anybody. Well, that, again, often comes from childhood if we learned that it wasn't safe to sometimes upset somebody. But if our children learn that it's just an emotion, my adult can handle it. My adult is going to show up for me. My adult might get upset sometimes, but they're not going to abandon me emotionally. They're not going to punish me. So this, again, is another big difference between adulthood and childhood, but I want you to know that we are planting the seeds for secure attachment in the ways that we show up for our kids today. Now, let's talk about the last thing that I do want to talk about a little bit when it comes to anxious attachment. As an adult, you might have somebody who becomes really codependent. They become way too dependent in their adult relationships. And we have to keep in mind that that's not healthy for an adult. But for a child, it's actually completely healthy to be totally dependent on their adult. One of the biggest mistakes that we make in attachment is forcing our children to be too independent too soon. Because when we do that, our children actually get the message, my adult isn't going to show up for me. My adult isn't going to nurture me when I'm sad. My adult isn't going to give me the emotional skills and tools that I need to thrive because I have to know that my adult is a soft place to land. I have to know that when I want a hug, I can get a hug. I have to know that if I'm expressing big feelings, that they're going to co-regulate for me. My job as an adult, dear parents and caregivers, is to let my little child from 0 to 3 and beyond be as dependent as they want to be. I'll say that again because it's important. Let my little child be as dependent as they want to be. Because once they build that incredible trust that we are going to be that soft place to land, then they're so much more comfortable pulling up their bootstraps and saying, I know I can trust my person. So I have confidence to venture out and be brave and do brave things. Now, this is very different from being extroverted versus introverted. Those are temperament traits and have nothing to do with attachment. However, it's really important to know that for little kids, being dependent is actually one of the healthiest things we can allow them to do because from that place of deep dependence grows their ultimate self-confidence and ability to be independent. So that is anxious attachment in a nutshell. Now, let's talk a little bit about the avoidant attachment pattern or avoidant attachment style. From here, some of this is actually going to look a little bit similar to the anxious attachment pattern, but the number one thing we may experience as an adult is incredible discomfort with emotional intimacy. And what that might look like is, tell me if this resonates with you. I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't need any help. I've got this. Just give me some space. There's nothing wrong with needing space sometimes. But if your default as an adult is to struggle to accept support, even when you need it, if you struggle expressing what you are authentically feeling, if you have trouble holding space for other people's big feelings, oh, it makes me so uncomfortable when people cry, or, ooh, I really hope they don't get mad because that's not safe for me. These can be some of the hallmarks of an avoidant attachment style because when I was a kid, I learned emotions are no bueno. These are not comfortable, safe, healthy things. These are something that cause discomfort in my adult. I am going to grow up to be hyper independent and so incredibly self reliant that even if I fall off a tall building on the way down, I'm probably saying, "It's okay, I've got this. Nobody needs to catch me." And then what happens? We crash, right? So it's much harder to recover relationally when we don't have practice letting people show up for us and when we struggle to show up for other people. As an adult, we may develop a really intense fear of intimacy because I learned when I was little that it wasn't safe to feel close to others because they were unpredictable about whether or not they were going to show up for me. Maybe as an adult, I prefer casual friendships. I might struggle with long-term relationships, be it friendships, romantic relationships, whatever, because that means I have to let people in. That means eventually somebody in this relationship is going to have some feelings and it's going to feel too scary for me. So it's much easier if I just keep people at arm's length. So again, we have to know that if this was the attachment pattern that we were raised with, if we experienced this growing up, it might take some really big work to show up for our child in a way where we can say, your big feelings make sense to me. I have the emotional capacity to support you and be with you and love you and co-regulate with you through your big feelings. I can handle this. I've got this. Likewise, from a parenting perspective, I am going to model for you that my feelings are safe. When I'm sad, I'm not going to make it your job to fix my sadness. I'm not going to say to a little kid, "Mom is sad. I really need a hug. I need your hug. Oh, I feel so much better with your hug." There's nothing wrong with saying, "I love your hugs. Hugs make me feel so good." But if I put the onus on the child to take care of me when I am expressing emotional vulnerability or sadness, that becomes parentification, which can essentially plant the seeds for scaring the child away from emotional intimacy because they were made to feel responsible for the adult's emotions way too soon. So instead, what do I do if I feel sad? I'm going to say go ahead and cry in front of your child if that's something you need to do. You might model, even if for your little child, I'm sad right now. It's not your job to take care of me. I love me. I love you. I love me too. Freudian slip. We get to love ourselves too, right? But I love you. I've got this. I'm going to get the support that I need. But here are some things that I'm going to do to take care of myself. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to pray. I'm going to talk to a friend. I'm going to go for a walk, whatever it is. But I get to model for my child. Here are the things that I do so that I can feel supported with my sadness rather than, "Oh, I shouldn't be crying right now." Of course you should if you're sad. Normal reaction. Likewise, if I am angry with my child or with anybody else for that matter, I don't want to come across as being big and scary to them because that might plant the seed for my very young child that anger's scary. That's not safe. I do not feel safe or comfortable in relationships where anger is present. Well, got tough news for you there. All relationships, all close relationships, eventually have some anger in them. People get frustrated with each other. That's normal. That's healthy. Anger is one of the core human emotions. So, my job as the adult is to practice nonviolent communication and be able to own my anger. I might say something like, "I am feeling angry right now because of X, Y, or Z. Here's what I'm going to do to regulate my body so that I can authentically feel my anger, but not take it out on you. And then we're going to figure out how we can solve this problem together because I value our relationship. I value our time together." Now, I realize if you have a particularly little kid, this is going to be an abstract conversation and they're going to have a hard time figuring out, what do I do with my parents' anger? But especially if your child is really young, these are the times where you get to model healthy emotional regulation. And you can say things like, I'm feeling mad right now, and I want to be peaceful with you. It's okay to get mad. It's not okay to hurt anybody, so I don't want to hurt you physically or emotionally. I want to be gentle with you. I love you. This again is what creates so much emotional literacy, so much emotional maturity in our children because we plant these seeds early that emotions are actually helpers. They're information. There is nothing wrong with us if we have them, if we receive them, if we express them. Now, I will share with you a tip that I personally have used many times in my parenting if I struggle with my child's big feelings, because let's face it, they can be triggering sometimes. My inner child is going, eek, this isn't safe, right? So, one of the phrases that I often use in my own parenting is all of your feelings are safe here, be it sadness, anger, whatever. But when my child is struggling, if she wants a hug, I will give her a hug. And I will say, all of your feelings are safe here. Because when I do that, I am telling her it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. But I'm also reminding my inner child, as well as my adult rational brain, that it's actually much healthier for a child to express their big feelings than to shove them down, right? We all know the dangers of suppressing emotions too long and too much, from physiological ramifications to psychological ramifications. We don't want to train our children or model to them, this is just something I need to stuff down because I'll handle it, I'll be fine. Again, we want to create emotional safety by allowing children to express what they need to express so that someday when they're older, they don't start checking those boxes that I've been sharing with you about, oh, emotions, scary things, don't want anything to do with them. So this is really another important shift that we can make to help avoid avoidant attachment style. We want to avoid avoidant attachment style. Sounds redundant, is what it is. Now, disorganized attachment style, this is actually the trickiest and hardest attachment pattern to reconcile because in this attachment pattern, the adult is, yes, the child's source of comfort, but the adult is also the child's source of fear or terror. And the thing is, children are actually designed to be attached to their caregivers because we as parents, we as caregivers are their only bet for survival. Our children are going to keep seeking us out, are going to biologically be wired to love us almost no matter what we do to them because they don't stand a chance without us. So, this is why a lot of adults still to this day have trouble acknowledging that perhaps some of the methods their parents used for them were actually harmful, because even as adults, we want to defend what we had to defend for our very own survival and well being when we were little kids. But obviously, disorganized attachment patterns are the most dangerous of them all because we do not want to set children up to say, this is what love is. So someday, when I choose friendships, when I choose relationships, I'm going to choose somebody whom some of the time makes me feel warm and happy and secure, but other times they hurt me. And I'm just going to chalk that up as being part of love. That is not what we want to set our children up for because of the many catastrophic consequences that can come of that. Now, how this often looks in adulthood is deeply conflicting desires between closeness and distance. I want to be close to you because as a human, I am wired for relationship, I'm wired for connection, but I am scared. I don't want to do that because I know how much it can hurt. I might also have come to believe when I was a child that I don't actually deserve love or closeness. I didn't really get it in a consistent way as a child. So I learned that I was bad. I learned that I deserved to be punished rather. So in my adult relationships, I'm going to continue to believe that I don't really deserve your love. I don't really deserve your closeness and your compassion because as a little kid, the message that I had to internalize, again for survival, was not my parent is bad. for doing these bad things to me, because a little child can't believe that about the person who's raising them, I would have learned it must be me. It must be my fault. I am unlovable and I am not deserving of kindness or the love that people are trying to offer me, even if it's perfectly healthy and safe love at this point. We don't want to do that to our kids. So now that I have thoroughly talked about the other attachment styles and how they show up in adulthood, how they take root in childhood and particularly in early child, let's talk about the characteristics and benefits of a secure attachment pattern. Number one is I simply feel comfortable with emotional closeness and intimacy. I trust people. When tricky things come up, I have the emotional toolkit to say, I can handle it. I can regulate my feelings effectively, and I can also handle yours. I'm going to have healthier boundaries because I know what's safe for me. I know what's acceptable for me. And I also know that I should respect your boundaries too, because I experienced my own respective boundaries when I was growing up. I know what that feels like. I am going to be independent and autonomous in healthy ways rather than unhealthy ways. I am naturally going to be more trusting of other people. I'm naturally going to assume the best, but I'm also going to have enough mental clarity to be able to identify that doesn't seem like a good idea. That relationship, I don't think I want that. I'm going to have enough self-esteem and self-worth that came from my secure attachment style that I'll be able to say, I know what's healthy and I know what isn't, and I choose more of the healthy stuff. I'm going to know how to be assertive when I need to be, and I'm going to be a much more effective communicator because I experienced that growing up. And when I do all of these things, I'm going to have healthier relationships. I'm going to be more resilient. I am going to be more confident, and I'm going to have so much better conflict resolution skills because I will have handled those things in my earliest years learning this is how people show up from one another, even if we're a baby, even if we're a toddler, even if we are a preschooler or another very young child, we are more or less learning that people show up for people. People help each other when they have a need. So couple of things that we can look for to know whether our child is securely attached. Now, some people will say, well, it must be the kid who, when their parent takes them to the playground, that secure child, that securely attached child is going to be the first one to run off and join in a big group of strange kids they've never met before and start the play because they know that that adult is a safe place to land. Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to say that has much more to do with those temperament traits that I mentioned a little while ago, extroversion versus introversion, versus whether or not they're securely attached. Now, what I'm more likely to be able to point to know whether my child is securely attached is my child using me as a home base in that situation? Maybe they want to stay close to me a little bit longer because they feel safest with me. Maybe they attempt to engage, but they're not so sure, so they come back and they want to be around me. I am their secure base where they are checking in because I offer more safety to them than anybody else will. Now, they may feel comfortable going and playing with the other kids, or they may not. That's actually not the point. The point is, are they coming to you as their secure base? Likewise, if they are sick or scared or hurt, are they turning to you for support or are they pushing you away? Now, that being said, every human on the planet, including little kids, sometimes wants some space. That does not mean the child is insecurely attached, but if their default is generally closeness in whatever way they tend to express a desire for closeness, if they do that with you, odds are good they're securely attached. Now, likewise, if you need to go away for a while, for whatever reason, you need to go to the store, you need to go to the other room for a little while, whatever it is, when you come back, is your child happy to see you, at least most of the time. Now, granted, if a child is busy playing or whatever, I'm not talking about those situations, but I'm saying generally speaking, is your child happy to reconnect with you? Or do they continue to distance themselves or not really seek you out as a point of connection? These are all some of the indicators that we can look at to determine whether or not our child is securely attached, among other indicators, of course. Now, let's finally get to what are some things we can do, especially in the early years, to help increase the likelihood that our child is going to grow and develop with a primarily secure attachment pattern. Now, I'll give you 5 things you can do, and each one of them has a couple of subpoints. First of all, I'm going to encourage you to focus on the 4 S's of secure attachment. This comes from the work of Dr. Tina Payne Bryson and Dr. Daniel J. Siegel, and they're some of the world's best attachment experts out there. And they talk about the 4 S's of secure attachment as seen, safe, soothed, and secure. Now, when a child feels seen, they know that we are seeing them for their own authentic experience rather than what we as the adult feel like they should be feeling or experiencing. So, for example, let's say my child comes home from school and she's, or daycare. In fact, I'll make this example even littler. Because we're talking about little kids here. Let's say that you cut the sandwich wrong. So if the adult says, "Oh, I see how upset you are about the sandwich being cut in a way that you didn't want. You wanted butterfly pattern in the sandwich, and I gave you triangles. I understand that's hard because I know how much you love butterflies. It's hard to be disappointed. I know what disappointment feels like, and I understand you. That makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that you feel disappointed. Now, it doesn't mean we have to go and cut the sandwich into butterfly shapes. That sounds really difficult to me, but we can validate the child's emotional experience because for them, it's their truth. Now, what many adults might get wrong and make their children feel unseen in this example is to say, well, my goodness, just eat the sandwich. It's a triangle, for goodness sake. What are you so upset about? Can't believe you're asking me to do butterflies, whatever. This would help the child feel invalidated and not be supportive of the relationship. The next S of secure attachment is safe. This goes beyond physical safety, although that's certainly important as well. But this would be, for example, and this is definitely a carryover from the previous S, these are all very interrelated. Let's say that your child is mad at you for not cutting the sandwich in butterfly shape. To help them feel safe, you get to say, "It's okay that you're mad at me. I understand. Everybody gets mad sometimes. It's a normal part of relationships. I love you even when you're mad at me. Of course I do. No feeling you could ever have would make me love you less." And that will help a child feel safe feeling what they need to feel versus don't use talk to me that way, young lady or young man. Go to your room, go to timeout, whatever it might be. That only teaches the child that I am not safe to express my emotions, and therefore I am less likely to be comfortable expressing emotions as I grow older. And this obviously harkens back to some of the insecure attachment patterns I talked about previously. Soothed, again, you'll see the carryover here. Here, the adult is going to be mindful to avoid projecting their own feelings on the child and instead meet the child where they are. I'm not going to stop at, "Oh, I understand you really wanted butterfly shapes in your sandwich. Yeah, that's hard." And then I walk away. Instead, I'm going to say, "I understand. You want a hug? Do you want to go read a story together?" And you co-regulate with the child to help them find their calm again. They essentially borrow your nervous system because you can handle it. And then secure, last but not least, means that the child trusts you to show up for them and support them. That doesn't mean we have to agree with everything the child does or says, but our child knows we're going to show up for them. The security comes from, well, the past 5 times I've gotten upset about the butterfly situation, my adult has shown up for me every time. Or maybe my adult has shown up for me 4 of the 5 times. That fifth time they were having a rough day, but I can let that go because overall, the adult's average is mostly showing up for me in these ways. And when I know that my adult mostly shows up for me, we don't have to do it perfectly, thank goodness. That helps the child feel secure. Now, I did just mention that one time, or maybe it's far more than that one time, where we really don't show up for our child in these ways and we let them down and we cause what's called a rupture in the relationship. It means basically a mistake. Now, there's actually very good news for you here. The good news is that you can repair after you mess up. So, what that might look like is, sweetheart, I know that I was feeling grouchy when you got upset about your sandwich. So, I yelled, and that was a mistake. I did not mean to yell at you. Will you please forgive me? I will do my best to show up for you going forward. Now, here's the great thing about kids. They are beautifully honest and beautifully authentic, so it's entirely possible that your child might say, "No, I don't forgive you." It's actually okay. And it actually makes a lot of sense because according to the Gottman Institute, for every single rupture or mess up, it takes approximately 5 positive, emotionally safe interactions with the other person to regain that emotional safety. So if your child says, "I don't forgive you yet," you can simply say, "That's okay. I understand and I love you, and I'm here for you and ready to reconnect whenever you are." And then you just leave it at that. But the power of apology without saying, "But you shouldn't have gotten so upset about the butterflies," or something that really negates the apology, when it's authentic, it can go such a long way to helping nurture a secure attachment pattern. Number 3 is remember that to discipline means to teach, not to punish. It's part of the reason I call my book Peaceful Discipline. It's a reminder to us to be peaceful because we as humans only learn best when we feel emotionally safe. And if we come out as being a punitive parent, when we take away the emotional safety that our children need to thrive, our children actually have a much harder time learning from us. And when our children don't feel safe with us because they're always afraid of the next punishment, they are much less likely to trust us. They are much less likely to be authentic with their emotions. And as we remember what the different attachment patterns are that are insecure, we know that we have to create emotional safety in order to achieve secure attachment. And in order to have that emotional safety, it means that when it's time to guide our children, we need to guide them, especially in those early years, through play, through stories, through modeling the behavior that we want to see, through lots of repetition. They're brand new here to planet Earth. They are trying. And keep in mind, from a brain science perspective, it takes between 25 to 30 years for the brain to fully develop. The prefrontal cortex is the very last to develop. And that's the part of the brain that handles things like impulse control and emotional regulation and things like that. It means they have to practice for years and years and years before the brain says, "I've got this." Of course, they won't be able to do it when they're very little. So to discipline means to teach, not to punish. And as I mentioned, I have lots and lots of very specific tools, guidance, and examples in the book if you need support around that. Thing number 4 we can do to help nurture secure attachment patterns in our children is heal what needs healing within us. Now, I realize we probably have some dads and other men here watching this. I'm going to speak specifically to the women for just a second. We happen to know that maternal mental health, that's us, the women, the mamas, maternal mental health significantly affects our child's well-being and can also affect the attachment patterns that they develop with you. So if you need support, find support. Perhaps that's therapy. Perhaps you need to do some sort of work around reparenting yourself, getting the emotional support that you need so that you have enough healing within your body that you can share the abundance of that healing with your child. And your child knows my parent has the emotional capacity, has the tools, has the resources, has the secure attachment patterns enough in their own relationships that I can emulate those things. Now, dads, this part is for you too. You also certainly affect your children's well-being. So if you need healing and support, seek it for yourself. If you don't do it for you, so to speak, do it because you love your children enough to know that they deserve someone who has enough healing to help our children grow alongside us as we heal with them. If you are curious about above and beyond therapy and things you can do, if you see it affecting your parenting, get a parent coach. I'm a parent coach. There are lots of other parent coaches out there in the world who would be happy to support you with no judgment whatsoever and show up for you in some of the ways that you need so that you can break the unhealthy cycles and patterns and show up in much healthier ways for your children. Now, number 5, last but not least, is I encourage you to view today's parenting choices as an investment in tomorrow's relationship. These are little kids, and what we do today absolutely matters. We now know from the research that children remember everything. Now, you might be saying, hold the phone, Sarah, you just lost me there because I don't remember everything about my childhood. We have two kinds of memories. We have explicit memories. These are the ones that we remember at a conscious level. And we have implicit memories. These are the ones we know at a subconscious level. Our bodies hold on to everything. So if you are thinking, oh no, I wish my child wouldn't remember even at a subconscious level the thing that I did, I have good news for you. Your children absolutely remember all of the ways you have shown up for them, all of the ways you've loved them. Every time you have picked them up and bounced them and carried them and loved them and read stories to them and sang to them and all the beautiful things we do in parenting. Our children's bodies, even if they don't have conscious memories of all of these things as they get older, absolutely do remember at a subconscious level. But that being said, we have an incredible opportunity as parents to reframe our children's tricky behavior and say, you know what? They're learning. They're little, particularly in the early years. They need attention. They need connection. There's no such thing as attention-seeking behavior. It's all connection-seeking. There is nothing wrong with giving a child who wants attention, attention. It's what they need to thrive. Now, some people will say, are we rewarding bad behavior? No, of course not. We are showing them that we are a safe place to learn and we can guide them in ways that do no harm. And again, I do lots of work around this specific topic, but I invite you to view every interaction you have with your child as an investment in the type of attachment pattern that they will have in the future. Will they learn people are going to show up for them? Will they learn people are going to love them? Will they learn that when they make a mistake, that we are a safe place to run to rather than someone to hide from? So that emotional safety is everything. Now, I promised, last but not least, to talk about what if my co-parent does not parent the same way I do? What if we have a secure attachment? What if I'm totally on board with everything you just said, Sarah, but my co-parent, not so much? Good news for you, my friends. It takes only one adult who can offer the child a secure attachment pattern for the child to reap every single benefit of secure attachment. And in the meantime, you are modeling to your co-parent, this is possible. This is how we can do things. I offer totally separate sessions about how to help your co-parent get on board. That's not this session, but I want you to know that if you are doing these things at least most of the time, again, be imperfect. I invite you to be imperfect. I certainly am. But if you're doing these things most of the time, you are setting your child up for a lifetime of success relationally. Maintain that, protect it with everything you have. And if you need additional support, like I said, pick up resources, hire a parent coach, do something that you need to do. I offer all this stuff, as do a lot of other people. But there are a lot of people who have your back and will help you create exactly that secure attachment that you and your child deserve to have together. Because I have to tell you from firsthand experience, there's nothing better. It feels so good. It makes parenting so much easier, so much lighter, so much more joyful, and it is 100% accessible to you. So if you are looking for more information, please check out my website, dandelionseeds.com. There is a hyphen at the end, dandelion-seeds.com. I'm again Sarah, middle initial R, last name Moore of Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting. You can find me on all the socials as that. In addition to on Instagram as Dandelion Seeds Positive Living. You are welcome to take one free mini course at my website. And thank you so much for being here.